Okay, welcome to the Freedom Hustles podcast. My name's John Banks from Side Income Man. I'm with Andy Lehman over at freedomskillsacademy.com. Today, this is episode 16, I do believe.
It is, yep.
Yeah, okay, so welcome along. So how are you doing, Andy? You all right?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm listening to the fireworks. So if anybody who's listening to this podcast hears the odd big bang or something going off, it's around bonfire night, Guy Fawkes night here.
Yeah.
So there's fireworks going off everywhere. How are you
Yeah,
doing?
well, we'll see how we go. I mean, yeah, I'm the same. I think I've got like a party, I think, next door. Party shouldn't be a party, should it? Because it's lockdown 2.0 today, the start of it again.
Yep, 4 weeks.
So we're now not allowed to do anything again. We've been, secluded to our own homes. Anyway, yeah, I'm having a beer, so to get through it. Anyway, so what are we talking about this evening on this episode?
We are talking about retainer contracts. Basically, this is something which is handy for home-based workers or freelance retainer remote workers, and that is retainer contracts, which is basically you get paid each month a specific amount of money to do a specific job. And this is one of those things where I know quite a few, should I say, the industries. There's a few industries where you can actually get paid several thousand up to $4,000, possibly $5,000 by big companies just to be there when they need you. And it doesn't have to be a huge amount of work. I mean, I've been, obviously, as you know, I've been studying a lot of copywriting, email writing, all that kind of thing. And there are people who are copywriters and they're on retainer contracts with companies who will write sales letters, and they'll write the funnels, and they'll write email newsletters, and they could be, like I say, they can be paid like up to $5,000 for what is possibly like 1 or 2 weeks' work, really. So the average sort of monthly wage would probably, if you were to try and get the $5,000, you'd probably be working sort of 8 weeks for that in most jobs. There you can get paid for doing like the equivalent of 2 weeks' work because of their skills, what they can deliver, and obviously because they're working for bigger companies. Yeah. So it's not going to be the case that you're going to get that with every company, because obviously, as you know, you've got a small, well, actually, I say small, it's a nice retainer contract of your own working for someone, but they're not in that big position, are they? They're not like, I can't think of the name now. Can't think of another company. Big company that does a lot of newsletters. Basically, they are Financial Agora. That's what I'm thinking of. They make millions per year, so they can pay a lot.
I mean, I was sort of, I guess the kind of sort of monthly retainers from a sort of individual perspective that people could definitely look to getting into would be, for example, take my little, so I build websites. I've got a little sort of web design agency and this, that, and the other. And one of the things I do to get clients on a sort of monthly is I'll offer up my own hosting, for example. So it's not a massive amount, but because obviously I pay the hosting company anyway, and for that you get X amount of space, if you like, on the servers. So if ever I build a website for somebody and they haven't got their own hosting, then I'll happily host them on mine, because it doesn't cost me necessarily any more, because I've already paid for that chunk of server space.
Mm-hmm.
And I can and then I can sort of rent out a portion of it to them, so I can effectively be the hosting, if you like, even though it's essentially the same company. So then I can charge them that way. Another way, again, another little add-on onto the sort of web design stuff, is you can charge people for sort of maintenance, like monthly maintenance of a website. A lot of people think that, like you can just build a website and, once you've published it, that's it. You don't have to do anything to it ever. Well, in some cases that is true. If a very basic website that doesn't have any kind of functionality, doesn't really offer that much. We'll be fine most of the time. But as you and I know, and I think we've talked about it on another podcast, where, as things evolve, things need updating. So, in our sort of field where we build a lot of sites in the WordPress platform, obviously all the plugins and that come with it, they always need updating. Sometimes one may no longer be supported, so you might have to change it. So you could offer a little simple service to somebody, say, well, we've built your website, everything, it's all above board, everything's fine, we've published it. However, for another, I don't know, $50, £50 a month or something like that, we'll do like a full maintenance sort of guide on it. If it ever goes down or anything like that, then we'll be on hand, and we'll update all your plugins and so on and so forth. So that's a nice little way. Like you say, you get 10 of those on your books, all of a sudden you've got yourself a nice little income stream, a side income stream, which is really quite passive. There is some element to it, but once you become a sort of familiar with this type of thing, it can often be not that much work for a nice little upsell.
A lot of the idea behind a retainer contract is often, you used to see it sometimes in the physical world. Obviously I used to spend a lot of years working as a joiner, but you'd often have big companies or organizations would have like a maintenance man. Years ago, they used to have their own maintenance man employed on the books, but then they were costly. So they would then get rid of them and then hire companies in. But then they would find that when something went wrong and they needed to hire somebody to get on the blower and they weren't available. So they would have like these retainer contracts where basically they would pay them, let's say, just off the top of my head, it was £500 a month. And that was for them to be exclusively there should there ever be a problem. So if there was a phone call saying, right, the factory's gone belly up, we need you to come in and sort the electrics out because we're losing tens of thousands of pounds a day, will you come in? And because they've signed that contract, they will come in no matter what job they're doing. Well, you could probably go 2 months without actually having to do anything. You're just like you're a retainer, basically. You're there for when they need you. And like you said with the hosting, you can build a website for somebody. And you can build it to the point that it doesn't actually need any work for several months. Maybe some plugins need updating, but then again, it's like a 5-minute job possibly. Or you could set up a website where you set it up for somebody, and then you can say for $100 or something, I'll give you a couple of articles. And again, you get 10 of those at say $100, and if the people are happy to pay that, that's a couple of articles each, which is probably a day's work. And then you're doing fine.
And it's important for people to realise that a lot of the stuff that you do, especially in the online world, it doesn't stay still, does it? And it shouldn't just stay still. I always say this to people, especially if ever I've dealt with a client, or if ever I've built a site for anyone, or any even stuff that I build myself. It's important that you keep it fresh, and it's important that you keep on adding to it. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, they have this sort of perception that, once they've built something, they put it out there and everything's fine and it's going to, transform their business and this, that, and the other. Where often, unfortunately, that isn't the case, is it? You might find that that's the kind of sort of, the initial kind of brickwork, if you like, and then the rest of it is you need to kind of nurture it, you need to grow it, and this, that, and the other. And it's a perfect example what you just said then about maybe hiring some writers, or outsourcing some of the content to somebody else, and then like you say, for a small, or even not necessarily a small fee, but for a reasonable price, you can start getting that. And then and like you said, if you become a writer where you've got a little deal with a blog where you're just doing 2 or 3 articles a month or something like that, that's great. And then, like you say, before you know it, you might have 2 or 3 of them blogs, and before you know it, you've almost got a regular income stream again, from 2 or 3 things, which may only be a few days' work. Whilst we're sort of keeping it online, another one I was thinking about earlier before we were talking about this was, which I think is a fairly, I won't say low entry, but it's something that I think a lot of people could do, and that would be social media managers. And I think when you say like social media manager, we're not talking about absolute experts in their field. We're literally talking about someone to run the page, run the account. Because you and I know everything takes time. Running an online business, everything takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And social media can be a big, big time consumer. So, things like that. And that's the type of thing which you would charge a monthly fee for.
I was only thinking about that myself the other day because I was writing a chapter in my book, and I was covering little sort of jobs that you can do from home for people who are looking for a second income or a hustle. And the
Yeah.
social media manager one is a good idea because you can approach, I won't say small businesses, but fairly middle to large businesses who are in probably not online businesses, sort of building trades, other real world businesses
Yeah.
who could probably benefit from having social media presence and an online
Yeah,
presence, but don't
restaurants, that
have,
sort of thing.
yeah, they don't have the time for people to do that. So
Mm,
you could basically go along and say, well, I'll do this. You sort of give yourself a package and say, right, I'm happy to do this for £100, $100 a month. And
mm,
obviously you're not going to necessarily give them any guarantee saying that you're going to earn $200 back unless you're really brilliant at it. But the chances are it will, because it has a knock-on effect if it gets people through the doors.
mm,
But you could do that, and you could approach several businesses.
mm,
And technically, as you know, everything is time-consuming. But
mm,
then for $100, you're not actually going to be doing a huge amount. You could be doing several Facebook posts. Probably not even a day. You could probably do one a day for a whole month. I mean, that's like 30 odd. So if you did two, that's 60. And that could
mm,
include creating, and you just go and do some images or whatever. But you
mm.
could do that for, like you say, you can get several companies
Yeah.
and then approach those. And then you've got yourself a little sort of, they are like little retainer contracts. It's like remote
Mm,
working. You're not actually working for
mm,
the company, because technically a company who will be paying you $100 or £100 to work on their social media, if they employed somebody, they'll be looking at, say, somewhere sort of around
a
1,200.
day. Yeah.
But if they had someone who's on the wage, on the
Mm,
books, that's a monthly wage. Whereas £100, they can afford that over a month.
mm. And I think as well is, we've often talked about before things like over delivery and that sort of thing. I mean, if you really, really go for it in your first couple of months, the chances are they're going to see some benefit from it, and then it's almost hard for them to cancel it. And I don't mean that in a you're not trying to deceive them in any way. I mean that like you've made them. There's been benefit to it. You've grown their account, you've grown their page, you've maybe even got them a few leads, or you know what I mean. And because of that, they're probably going to keep you on. And then before you know it, like you say, that £100 a month becomes £1,200 a year, which if you're clever about it, for the example, like you said then about a Facebook page, you can schedule an entire month's worth of content. You could do the whole thing in a day. You could schedule a whole month's worth of content in one day, and then you're done. That's your work done for that month, and that page will gradually just grow and tick over.
Yeah.
And they're happy because they're getting someone that's running their page. And if you just generated a report maybe at the end of each week or at the end of each month or fortnight or whatever, which you can do straight from the analytics inside the profile of the page, generate a report, say here's what happened out of all these images, here's the reach, here are all the comments. If you want, you can go in and engage with all these people and you'll get some leads, and there you go. And that like you say, is not really a difficult thing. I think once you've learned the basics of that sort of thing, you could actually grow that.
I mean, I haven't used it for a long time myself, but you've got social media tools like Hootsuite. So you can actually, as you said, you can schedule posts within Facebook, but you can still schedule other posts for other social medias all together.
Yeah.
So you could do a month's worth in say a day or so. And then going
Mhm.
back to your sort of your report at the end of the month, Screencast-O-Matic, just record a quick video, 5-minute video, send it to
Yep.
them, going through everything. They can see it, they can hear you, and you're showing them what they're doing, and then they'll be, if you a lot of the problems, really, I would say, is when you're not contacting people on a regular basis. They give
Mm.
you money and then disappear. Yes, they might see a Facebook post pop up, but they may not know what it is or what's
Yeah.
happening or anything like that. So
Mm.
you can basically go in there and say, I've done all this, created all this, post this onto
Yeah.
Facebook, onto Twitter.
Mm.
I've seen we've had this amount of results. You had this message. Someone says they wanted to come in and see you. Do you know anything about that? But basically, yeah. So yeah, you can get quite a few different companies. I think social media is a great
Yeah.
little side hustle for people to get
Mm.
involved in. But again, like I say, with the online world, there is so many different sort
SEO
of
is another big one, isn't it?
SEO. There's email
Mm.
newsletters, email writing. Um,
Mm.
yeah, because I mean, like I say, with the retainer contracts, I know of people who are on the books for big companies,
Yeah.
and they're not actually like, it's not like they're contracted to do. We want you to write 20 articles this month, every month. It's not
Mm.
necessarily a contract like that. It's more like sometimes one month they'll probably ask you to write a whole email sequence for a funnel.
Yeah.
Then the next month you might not hear from them again until
Mm.
the next month, and you probably get paid for 3 months, even
Mm.
though you've probably only worked the last two. And a lot of
Mm.
it is because it's based on results, especially with
Yeah.
like email marketers and the copywriters who
Mm.
have got the skill to create leads and sales. That if they pay you, let's say they pay you $2,000 a month, so say 3 months it's $6,000, and you've done, equivalent of 4 weeks work over those 3 months.
Mm.
Well, the work that you've done, if it's generated them like $30,000,
Yeah.
£40,000 in
No
sales,
brainer, isn't it? Yeah.
it's nothing to them, because
Mm.
if you hadn't done the work, if they hadn't spent the $6,000, they'd been 30, 40 grand. It
They
wouldn't have
wouldn't
been
have.
there.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the retainer contracts are not necessarily like being a remote worker on the books or a freelancer. It's not like you have to work each month that
Mm.
amount. Sometimes it's just an agreement that you're there on their beck and call. When they need you, you're their go-to person.
I think another one that's quite interesting is Facebook ads, or any kind of ad platform, because I know what they do there is, I've certainly, I've not done this. I mean, I've ran ads before, but I've not done it, for anyone. But I think, you get budget. So you'd work for a company, you'd say, well, I'll be your Facebook ad manager or something, and for that they would obviously pay your rate, and they would give you a budget. And if you're clever with that, you can not only learn a hell of a lot yourself, because you got, so let's say you get $1,000 budget to play with, and they're paying you, say, $500 to run it. So you basically run all their ads for them. You're spending their money. Obviously, it's important that you get some sort of result out of it, but not only that, you're learning a lot about the whole thing yourself, because that's kind of an ever evolving sort of industry. It's a very competitive industry, and there's a lot of, tweaks and sort of testing and that you can do within it. So obviously you're learning a lot about it yourself. You're getting paid for doing it, and obviously you're spending, the company's money. And like you said earlier, if you've got in with a massive company with, millions of dollars turnover every year, they're not going to care about a few grand. They're going to want you to. They literally want you to spend that money, even if you get no results. Again, that still tells them that, okay, well, we don't do it that way again. You know what I mean? So they learn from it anyway. But and yeah, no, it's an interesting one. I think there's a few options. There's certainly, a whole load of, ways that you can take this. I sort of see these type of things cropping up more now on things like, if ever I need to go and get a little job doing or something, I'll often head over, to like Fiverr or, some of the other freelance sites, and you see more and more now people offering, it's not just a case of, oh, I'll write you a blog post. It's more like, I'll become your, writer in a sense. You know what I mean? They're trying to get
Yeah.
that. So rather than one, I'll do you 5 a month sort of thing. And, obviously you can negotiate the price, but
I
yeah.
think my only concern would be, there's like I said, there's two different types. There's those where you can approach small businesses and do it small and get several. But if you go for like a big company, you could probably do 2 or 3 big companies. But then if they want you on their sort of beck and call if there's ever an issue and they need you and you're working on another project. You can't really drop that one to go onto that one because you're also with the same agreement that you would work on their projects when they need you.
Yeah.
Which is unless you choose a specific role that you can do that. Like with a lot of internet and web stuff, it's a lot easier than when I used to work in the building trade. When you had to drive to places and you had to travel there, and it took you had to lift lots of tools and heavy stuff around. With the internet, it's probably not so bad. I mean, I suppose if you've got a big contract and one person wants you while you're working on another sort of emergency, I suppose you can pull somebody in to help you. But with the smaller ones, you kind of sort of lay out what you're doing, or it's not so stressful. But if you're getting like between £2,000 and £5,000 for one company, and you've got 2 or 3 of these contracts, and then suddenly they all want you at the same time, I suppose it could be a little bit.
It can be. That's where
a little bit stressful, but
there's certainly a lot of time management and lessons and skills like that, which obviously help. So, okay, well, let's do some sort of closing summary thoughts on this. I mean, mine would basically be there are a whole range of things. You don't need to sort of think of this as, I wouldn't say if you're just starting out, especially in the online world, you're trying to get like, what we call these sort of, monthly income streams, then, quite often you can start off quite small, and they can obviously grow, So look at things like hosting, writing, social media management, that sort of thing. And then, as you scale it, you can obviously venture out a little bit further. But yeah, so that would be my advice, would be to kind of start off quite small, and you'd be surprised at how they can grow. I
think I agree, because I mean everybody would love to get to land a retainer where you get paid several thousands by one company. But if you like say you're just starting out, sort of start small, you get 2 or 3. Because I mean, let's say for example you want to do blogging and you want to make money through your website or sell your own products, which is fine, but it's a lot of hard work. If you can get a few retainer jobs or a few little paid jobs, which helps bring in the money while you're doing that. I know it takes you away from that work, but then it brings in some pennies and keeps you afloat. But then you'll probably be surprised that might actually grow into something a bit bigger and a bit more.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
You're training yourself up, as you said earlier. You're sort of learning the skills. Then if you become good, they obviously want to keep you, so then they'll probably end up paying you more, because you'll get more confident and you'll start saying, well, I don't want to do it for £50 a week. I want to do it now for £100 a week. And if you're delivering, they'll try and keep you. And if you're really good, they'll probably pass you on to someone else. And who knows, it'll probably actually become more financially viable than trying to do your own blog. But it's definitely, like you say, you've got to start small, because you've always got to start somewhere. But it's great for building your confidence and your skills.
Yep, excellent. I think I'd agree with that. Just in time for the fireworks again. Anyway, okay, well, that's good. So we'll wrap up there. So I hope you've enjoyed that one. Again, as always, any questions, drop us a comment in below. Reach out to us on the various platforms. So once again, I've been John Banks over at sideincommand.com.
And I'm Andy Lehman at freedomskillsacademy.com. And thank you very much for listening. And again, we shall speak to you and see you in the next podcast next week.
Thanks very much.